Welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History 25th Annual American Indian Heritage Celebration. Our presenter this afternoon, Mr. Freeman Owle, will begin in just a moment, but we'd like to start with a few notes. Remember to ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them and share with our presenter. We have many additional resources about the American Indian Cultural Festival and North Carolina on our website. Please visit NCAIHC.com. We thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Museum of History Foundation for helping to make this event possible. Please stand by for a few additional slides. Now let's get started. Welcome, Mr. Freeman Owle, and for your willingness to join us today to enlighten us about the Cherokee language. What additional information are you prepared to share with us today?
Well, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Cherokee tribe and the Cherokee language. I was born and raised on the Qualla Indian boundary, and a lot of people like to hear the Cherokee Indian Reservation, but fortunately, we don't have a reservation. It's in federal trust, but the reason we call it the Qualla Indian boundary is because after all the land was taken away from us, we bought the land back ourselves. So then the federal government came in and said, we need to take care of you. We've been here 15,000 years. They'd been here over 200 and something, so they want to take care of us, so they put the land in trust. So that's why we call it the Qualla Indian boundary. We have three groups of Cherokee. One is the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma because of the Trail of Tears. One is the United Kituah Band, and the other is the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Nation. And those are the only Cherokee tribes, three of them. So the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is located in western North Carolina, around the place called Cherokee, North Carolina. We have 17,000 people on the Cherokee boundary, and we are trying very hard to preserve a language which is dying. Every year we have some of the elder people die, and right now with COVID and this type of thing, we have younger people dying that are speakers. And at one time, I remember when I was a child growing up there, we had at least 2,000 fluent Cherokee speakers. And today, they've died away to the point that we only have a few hundred fluent speakers. So one of the things that we're trying to do is through the United Kituah Band, the Cherokee Nation, and also the Eastern Band of Cherokees. We're trying to keep the language alive. Every year we have a council meeting with all of these three groups of Cherokees coming together. And that's one of their main focuses. How do we preserve Tsalagi? And one of the things that we were doing is we were taking little children away at the age of about 5, and they go to school on the school bus. Their bus driver speaks Cherokee, their janitor speaks Cherokee, their teachers all speak Cherokee. And so all they do all day long is speak Cherokee. And when they come home, they are helping them to teach their parents how to speak Cherokee. You probably ask, well, how did it disappear so quickly? When I went to school, to Indian school, they would whip us, sometimes severely, for speaking Cherokee. My parents would not teach me because they went to boarding schools also. And so eventually it'd get to the point where the government says, you're no longer a threat to the United States, and so you can have your culture. You can have your language. And so we're here today to teach you a few things about the Tsalagi language. You look up here at the top, and this Tsalagi is writing that was produced by a man by the name of Sequoyah. Sequoyah was a handicapped person who was a genius. So sometimes we may have a little handicap, but it does not stop us from doing wonderful and great things. Sequoyah invented a syllabary that we could write with, and it looks like this. Sa-la-ging. Looks like a G and a W and a Y, and you can tell he looked at the Cherokee alphabet a little bit, English alphabet, and copied it a little bit and changed it so he could come up with other words. And so when we write my name, Dagwadoa Ugugu, Dagwadoa means my name is, Ugugu means owl. So we write that as U, Gu, Gu. We write the Salagi Ugugu, that means Cherokee owl. So Sequoyah made us the only tribe in the United States who can read and write in our own language, Salagi. We'll look up here. We're going to teach you how to count in Cherokee. Shogwo is 1. Ali, 2. Zoe, 3. Nagi, 4. Ishki, 5. Chudali, 6. And by the way, there is an H that's silent in there. Shu. We don't write it, so we know it's there. Chudali, Galgwogi. The I is sort of there, but it's silent also. Sanela, 8. 9 is Shonela, silent H again, Shonela, and Shkohi, 10. Cherokees can continue to count and all up his squaw is 500. So it just goes right on up to thousands, and they can count as far as they want to. Remember this word up here, we told you that was sa, la, gi. That means Cherokee. And so Cherokee was, Sequoyah was a Salagi Ashgaya, Cherokee man. Ashgaya. So all this can be written in a syllabary. And we were talking about a while ago the colors. And we'll go over those with you in a little while. We'll start up here with red is gi-ga-gay. Gi-ga-gay. And one thing we need to do is go over this key. We have our vowels, like in English, is A, E, I, O, U, and Y. But we're going to change that to a V. In Cherokee, we don't have the Y, we have a V. The A says ah, that's what it says. And the E says A. And the I says along E. The O says its name, O. And the U says oo, like food or boot. And the V says You don't often hear that in English. You might hear somebody who says, huh? But they have a lot of in the Cherokee language, so we had to have the V there instead. And we wanted the A to make one sound. We let the E say A. And the A say ah. And we left out the ah. There is no ah sound in the Cherokee language. So we get over here, we went over to red, gi, ga, gi, there's the E, ga, gay, there's the A, the E says A. And you have to know that to read the Cherokee syllabary or read the phonetics. Green. Look at that. Say in your own mind what you would think that might be. Ah. Say he. I'd say he is green. Okay, let's look at blue. Remember the H is silent in there? Sha. Ko. Na. Gay. Shakonagay. You ever heard of a place? I know there's one over in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. They call it Shakonagay. And in Dollywood, they said something like Shakonagay, the place of blue smoke. If you look up at the Smoky Mountains, and I'm sure many of you have been to the Smokies, and you look out there on a day where it's clear everywhere else, but above those mountains, They look like blue mountains. Place of the blue smoke, Chikonage he. So that our language is used. Yellow, Ilonage, Ilonage. Now I was thinking of Dahlonega, Georgia. So what did they name it yellow for? Because gold was found there. And that is basically the reason that the Trail of Tears happened. They found Dahlonega, yellow rocks in Georgia. A little boy came out carrying this big yellow rock one day, and he said, "Oh, it's so heavy. Look what I found. I found a pretty rock." And from that moment on, Cherokee were meant to move. So 15,000 Cherokees were rounded up just because of the gold and the color of their skin. They were marched to Oklahoma Territory, and the government told them, "Where the United States will never need this land." It wasn't but a few years until they had overtaken the Cherokee, the Indian state, and Oklahoma was supposedly an Indian state. But then the settlers even surpassed that and went all the way to California. So Dahlonega, yellow. Gundagai. Gundagai is black. And white is Unega. Unega. And we're going to talk about gray. And the Cherokee Ushkola word means faded. So we would say Gundagai Ushkola. Gray. So it means black, faded is gray. So this Cherokee words are really unusual. I heard purple pronounced as uwete. And there's other words that Cherokee say as purple. I know in this book that produced by the Cherokee Preservation Foundation, and it's given to each one of the tribal members, and Myrtle Driver was a big person in translating this thing over. And so it's a real good resource for us to have there on the reservation. And United Kadua Academy had some work to do with it. And so we go through this thing, and I'm going to go back to the color chart. And I think they did an excellent job on that. But in here they say purple is deluge. Deluge. And another person that told me that's uwete. So it doesn't matter. Both of them are correct. Whichever one that you want to use. Uwete. Okay. Luge. Luge. That's what Myrtle says. That's fine. She's one of our fluent speakers, and she knows. So it's a good thing. We'll go on down here to a lot of the animals that we have and we work with on the reservation. We had an interesting thing here a while ago. It said this is Waka, is a cow. And the Spaniards probably brought the first cows over here. And the word for cow in Spanish is very similar to this. That's where it came from. And you know what? We have to come up with words like for computers and coffee. Because there was no coffee here when the settlers came. So we called it in Cherokee, ka-wee. Ka-wee. Coffee. And so banana. Guanana. See that we have to, Cherokees have certain words, letters, or sounds they don't have in Cherokee, so we have no B sound, so we have a gua sound. It sounds close to B, so guanana. Kawi, and there's the C, so we had to use the K-A, Kawi. And so that would probably be not mulberry, but Kawi, pronounced more like that. give you the two eyes, which they eat. Get that right there in a minute. But the color chart, the numbers, and we have names of our clans in Cherokee. Aniwaya, the Wolf Clan. Ani Shakonage, the Blue Clan. Ani, you notice that word Ani? Ani means two things, or maybe even three. A-N-I means strawberry, or it means people. Aniwaya, the wolf. Wa, ya. Ani, waya. And the word squaw is bird. See, squaw. It's bird, so ani, squaw means bird clan. And if you put a he on the end of it, squaw he, that's a bird town community. Wayahi, we get rid of the people part of it. Wayahi, the place of the wolf. So it's Wolf Town. And so the language is there. You know, I was talking a little bit a while ago about a very sad thing. They came and they took my mother and my father away from their parents when they were about 5 years of age. Parents didn't have any choice. They put them in boarding school. And they would whip them very severely if they caught them speaking their language. They took away anything that grandmother or mother had made for them, their necklaces, their moccasins. They even cut their long hair. They put them into suits. And if you ever go on the computer and look up Carlisle Indian School, you see all of these little kids around this building up there. And there's not a single smile anywhere. And it's sort of sad to look at that because they were there and the federal government had a policy to kill the Indian and save the child. So it was to do away with anything that was Native American. And if you notice, those people were dressed in those fine suits. But in my way of thinking, the beautiful skins and the beautiful leather and deerskin and whatever they had their clothing made out of when they were in their original dress was the most beautiful. And it never did really kill the Indian in those children because we are still here and we will never go away completely. Our language is older than any other language that had been here in the United States at any time. I sometimes ask children, how many of you speak an American language? And they all raise their hand, and I say, what is that American language you speak? And they say, English. And I say, where is English from? They say, England. So a little bit of reality check there. I know I walked through the school hallways in Cherokee, North Carolina, and I see the little children coming down the hall. And I know that the ones that speak and the ones that don't. They may be coming down, not wanting to come to school that early in the morning, but I'll speak to them. I say, Osigwazu. And that means Oshanale, means good morning. Are you doing okay? And they look at me and they'll say, Osta, Nihina. I'm doing good. And how about you? Then all of a sudden there's a big old smile on their face. Just knowing, by telling them some of their language, hey, look, you're special. I know a little bit of it too. So I learned my Cherokee by listening to other students in school who could not speak English, because we had to teach them English to keep them out of trouble. Because every time the kid would not respond, the teacher would grab their hand like that, they would bend it with one hand and beat it with a ruler with the other. And we didn't want them to get hurt, so we would teach them English. I was once talking to Mr. Gil Jackson, who used to work at the Cthulhu Academy, and that's where we take the children to teach them the Cherokee language. And they speak nothing but Cherokee all day. He said, Mr. Owle, I want to tell you something. I said, what's that, Gil? He said, I went out the other day. He said, you remember how they used to beat us for speaking Cherokee? I said, yeah. He said, I went out the other day and saw two little girls under the slide. And remember, this school only teaches Cherokee. I sneaked up on them. They were talking. I wanted to see what they were saying. So when I got there, I listened, and they had sneaked off and hid under the slide to speak English, whereas we used to sneak off to speak Cherokee. So things had turned around completely from that time on. So I'd like to cover a little bit of Cherokee with you. And bread in Cherokee is gadu. I am hungry. Agiyoshiha. Agiyoshiha gadu nole shigwahawiya. I am hungry. I want pig meat and bread. And there's one thing in Cherokee that is a wonderful food, and it's called tili disui. It's chestnut bread. How many of you ever heard of chestnut bread? We can buy those things this time of year. You can go down to Ingles maybe, and you find the chestnuts in the store. You don't have to roast them over an open fire all the time. And so you take those chestnuts, tili, and you cook them about half done after you peel them. There's a black covering still on them. Cook them about half done, and that black covering, well, you just peel it off, and sometimes it comes off in a pot of boiling water. And you take those and you cut them into quarters. Chestnuts are wonderful. They used to grow here everywhere. And so once you got them quartered, you take about twice as much cornmeal, 1/2 chestnuts, 1/2 cornmeal, nothing else but water. And you have a pot of boiling water on the stove. You put enough water in there to make them like into a patty cake or a dumpling. It'll stick together. You don't have no salt, no soda, nothing, plain cornmeal. You make a patty out of that, and you put it in the boiling water. And then you let it boil for about 45 minutes. And you take that thing out, and you dice it into small sections. You pour a little bacon grease on droppings on top of that, and some salt. Not much. We don't want hypertension. Just try it. You can cook this. So the name for it is disui gadu. And if you want to make the same thing into bean bread, pinto beans, cooked about half done. And the reason you do that is because you're going to cook it more. You don't want to overcook it. Cook those beans about half done. Save the water because you're going to use it to mix the cornmeal with it. And do the same thing, plain cornmeal, beans. Make that patty again, and you put it in boiling hot water, and it stays together. It doesn't fall apart. You dice that thing up, and you pour that same bacon drippings on it and salt it to your taste. You have a really good ancient Cherokee food. They call the bean bread tuyan disui gadu. Beans mixed up, shelu gadu, cornbread. So there's a few things if you really want to learn. We have something called the green coneflower. And it is called in Cherokee sochani. Sochani. Sochan. And you boil that thing as a green. We have poke salad. Have you ever eaten poke salad? Yes, one person. And that some people say the poke salad is carcinogenic. But if you boil it and you pour the water off about 3 times, and the heat does something to the carcinogens, it's no longer carcinogenic. And those things cooked with eggs and scrambled up, poke salad and eggs, really good. We have something up Wasing. The mountains are called ramps. Be like an onion that grow wild in the woods. They have broad leaves like garlic, and it is really, really good. You can cook them with potatoes. You can cook them with eggs. And so that's some of the things the Cherokees eat. Meat, the word for that is hawiya. So we can say we wouldn't eat a wolf, but waka hawiya is like hamburger, steak. Shigwa hawiya, pork chops or sausage. Don't eat a horse. Don't eat a dog. So those things are some of the things we use. Eggs. The word is pretty easy to say. Eggs is uetsing. And beans, tuya. Potato, nuna. Agiyoshiha. You remember that means I am hungry. Agiyoshiha. Nuna aquaduli. That means I'm hungry. I want some potatoes. Aquaduliha. Nuna aquaduliha. Potatoes I want. And we say soup. Ugama. And we say butterfly. That's same word for butterfly as for elephant and butterfly are the same word because they got big ears. Gagama is a cucumber. And shelu. I used that a while ago in the word. So shelu gadu. Akaduliha shelu gadu is cornbread. Next one is milk. Unading. We're about getting close to the end of our session. Let's see if we have any questions. That's something, anything I did not cover.
Mr. Freeman Owle, we appreciate you. We know this is just a short session of what we would call a cultural session. Language is culture.
Yes.
And one question I'd like to ask with the 3 minutes that we have remaining was, we have a question regarding the school that your parents were sent to.
Yes.
What school were your parents sent to at the age of 5? I think you mentioned.
At the age of 5, they came to Soco Valley and they picked up my mother, took her away from my other members of the family, and put her in the Cherokee Indian boarding school. Mm-hmm. And they kept her there. She stayed night and day and might possibly get to go home in the summertime. Mm-hmm. But she was allowed to speak nothing but English in that school. She said that was one of the saddest places she's ever been in her life. And said on Sunday, after they'd take her to church, she'd go down and stand by the fence and said, sometimes my dad would come. Said he'd give me a nickel, which was a lot of money in those days, but she could not go outside the fence. So they completely trained and raised those children. And she said that they would beat them and wash their mouth out with lye soap when they got caught speaking Cherokee. And she said many of them, that's all they knew how to speak. And so the policy of the United States government, like I said a while ago, was to kill the Indian and save the child.
Mr. Freeman Owle, we thank you so much for taking time to visit with us today and to share your experience and the importance of the Cherokee language and the legacy that is left for us as all North Carolinians and as Americans. Thank you so much.
Thank you. American Indian Heritage Celebration. It's a good thing.
Thank you.